Picture this. You are mapping out this massive, multi-million-dollar global aviation strategy.
Right. High stakes stuff.
Exactly. And you've crunched all the fuel efficiency metrics, down to the exact decimal point. You've got your capital costs, the regional route distances, all of it.
You've got the perfect spreadsheet.
Yeah. On paper, you have selected the absolute perfect airplane for your fleet, but then you realize your entire spreadsheet is about to be completely derailed for the most bizarre reason.
Oh, because of the luggage.
Yes, because your passengers carry really, really heavy suitcases.
No, yeah.
Or, okay, imagine paying off a brand new apartment in full, right? You wait 6 torturous years for the construction to finally finish.
Which is awful on its own.
Right, but when you finally show up to get the keys, the developer demands more money. And why? Because some city bureaucrat decided to change the way they measure the hallway outside your door.
That is just, well, it's the sound of theoretical design crashing headfirst into practical reality. You know, you can write the most elegant rule or policy imaginable, but the moment human behavior enters the equation,
Things get messy.
incredibly messy.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are sitting here at the offices of Addis Fortune, which is Ethiopia's largest English weekly newspaper, and our mission today is to, well, pull back the curtain on this exact phenomenon.
Yeah, we're taking you through the pages of our weekly editions to really extract the core insights from a stack of stories we've been tracking.
Stories about Addis Abeba's rapid modernization, right? We'll be exploring how this booming metropolis navigates the intense friction between market forces, these rigid bureaucratic rules, and, the actual human experiences caught right in the middle.
Because whether we are analyzing the massive housing shortage or the psychology of this surging stock market, or even that airline deal you just mentioned, the central theme running through the paper this week is balance.
Right.
We are looking at what happens when the scales tip and the rules meant to create order end up creating their own unique brand of chaos.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I think we should start at the literal foundation of any city, which is housing.
Definitely the place to start.
Before we look at the high-level capital markets or global trade stuff, we really have to examine how city-level rules are impacting just daily survival in Addis Ababa.
Because the sheer scale of the housing deficit here is staggering.
It really is. The city is currently over 1 million units short, and projections show that a massive 60% of city households are expected to be renters.
Wow. Yeah, and when you have that level of continuous migration into a capital city, the demand chronically outpaces the supply.
Yeah, you just can't build fast enough.
Exactly. And that creates a highly volatile, highly predatory market if it's left completely unchecked. Landlords end up holding all the leverage, and tenants are just constantly living on the edge of displacement.
Right, so the city administration steps in to act as a shield, basically. They instituted a policy to cap rent increases at around 11.24% for the new fiscal year.
Right, based on the research from the City Leadership Academy.
Yeah, the logic is to deliberately keep rent increases just below a 10% inflation line, which, sounds like a highly rational, engineered solution to protect tenants from getting priced out.
On paper, sure.
But setting a price ceiling in a market with a 1 million unit deficit, it's like trying to stop a boiling pot from overflowing by just pressing the lid down harder instead of actually turning down the heat.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. The steam has to go somewhere, and the pressure just builds in other areas of the kitchen.
And that boiling pot analogy is playing out in real time right now.
Yeah.
It's a classic economic paradox.
How so?
Well, by implementing administrative price ceilings when supply is severely constrained, you don't magically make housing more affordable across the board.
Yeah.
You actually often inadvertently create shadow markets.
Right, it just goes underground.
Exactly. You lock both landlords and tenants into this cycle of mutual financial stress. The frozen price simply doesn't reflect the real cost of living or, frankly, the cost of maintaining those properties.
So the landlords get squeezed too.
Yeah, they might resort to illegal evictions or just completely halt maintenance.
Yep.
Meanwhile, new renters entering the city can't find anything at that capped price anyway.
And we see the human cost of that pressure in the stories reported in Addis Fortune this week. Take Sahaya Bera, for instance.
Right, her story really stood out.
She is a 75-year-old widow living on a very modest pension, and she supplements her income by renting out 3 small units on her property.
Which is pretty common.
Super common. But her daily expenses are skyrocketing, particularly her medical care and the cost of the daily help she needs. But her rental income is essentially frozen by this mandate.
because the law requires her to honor existing leases without raising rents to match the current market.
Exactly. If she could list those units today, she'd get nearly double what she is currently getting. But instead, she's absorbing the full impact of inflation all on her own.
But then, on the flip side of that same dynamic, you have tenants who are still suffocating despite the government's protective caps. The policy is meant to save them, but the macroeconomic reality is still just pulling them under.
Yeah, look at Nagash Talos's situation. He's 40 years old, supporting a family of 5, and combined with his wife's earnings, they make about 32,000 birr a month.
Which doesn't stretch very far these days.
Not at all. Rent for their modest 2-room house eats up over a third of that income. They are living paycheck to paycheck, just terrified of any unexpected medical bill.
And didn't his landlord warn him of a hike?
Yes. The landlord warned him of a massive hike coming when the current lease expires, because the landlord feels it's necessary to survive. So Nagash is having to make these heartbreaking choices. He is actively pulling his 3 children out of private school and moving them into public school just to brace for the housing costs.
It's just a brutal bind for everyone. And the divide among experts on how to solve this is really sharp. Looking impartially at the source material, both sides have highly compelling arguments.
Right, it's not a black and white issue.
Not at all. On one side, you have Dr. Nurahun Andarji. He's a light researcher who co-authored the city's study. His argument is that these controls are basically the only dam holding back a flood of mass homelessness.
Because without them, the prices would just explode.
Exactly. He argues if you allow landlords to set prices entirely unchecked in a market with this much scarcity, the salaried workers and the middle class will quite literally be pushed onto the streets.
He maintains the ceiling functions effectively, right? As long as general inflation is kept below 10%.
Right. But then you have economists like Dr. Allah Alamu and veteran urban planner Manalish Alamu pushing back hard against that narrative.
What's their take?
They argue the price controls are a distraction from the root disease, which is the sheer lack of supply. They point out that recent city demolitions have actually wiped out existing housing, tightening an already restricted market.
Yeah, making the deficit even worse.
Manalish warns that excessive government intervention in pricing actively discourages private investment. Think about it. If a real estate developer runs the numbers and sees they can't make a sustainable return because of rent caps, they simply won't build new apartments.
Which means that 1 million unit deficit just keeps growing.
Exactly. The city wants to act as a price setter to protect the vulnerable today, while critics are shouting that the government needs to act as a facilitator of new supply to protect everyone tomorrow.
Right. And you know, I want you, the listener, to think about any highly regulated market you interact with daily. When rules are imposed to artificially suppress prices in a system where there simply isn't enough product to go around, the friction doesn't just disappear.
It just gets transferred.
Usually onto the exact people the rules were initially designed to protect.
Which naturally leads people to look for an exit strategy. I mean, if renting is this precarious nightmare of looming hikes and frozen incomes, the ultimate goal becomes ownership.
Yeah, buying a home should theoretically remove you from that specific friction, right?
Theoretically, yes.
But transitioning from renter to buyer in Addis Ababa doesn't mean you escape the collision between bureaucratic rules and reality. The battleground just shifts from monthly rent checks to, well, complex legal paperwork.
And that paperwork is proving to be incredibly expensive.
We are tracking this 50 million birr lawsuit currently working its way through the federal courts that perfectly illustrates this. 6 home buyers are taking on Noah Real Estate, which is one of the country's most prominent developers, over apartments in the Noah Victory Project.
And from what I read, these buyers did everything right.
They did. They paid their contracts in full. They endured a grueling 6-year wait for construction to conclude, which was actually double the timeline they originally agreed to.
Wow.
Yeah, but now, with the building finally standing, the developer is refusing to hand over the keys unless the buyers pay a substantial extra fee.
And this hinges on a very specific, almost baffling administrative technicality, doesn't it? Regarding how space is quantified?
Yes. So, what does this all mean for the buyers? The developer is claiming the apartments are now technically larger than what was contracted.
But the physical walls didn't expand.
No. The walls of the apartments didn't magically expand. What happened is the Land Bureau, the government agency responsible for issuing official title deeds, they recently changed their methodology for registering units.
Okay, so how do they measure it now?
They started using a system that includes a proportional share of the building's common areas in the deed's total square meters.
Wait, so they're counting the hallways?
Yes. We're talking about a mathematical slice of the public corridors, the shared elevators, the parking spaces. So, on the official government paper, the deed registers the apartment as significantly bigger than the footprint written in the original private contract.
Ah, and NOAA Real Estate is looking at that official deed and then looking at a standard clause in their sales contract.
The tolerance margin.
Right. The contract includes a 10% tolerance margin, which is a buffer typically meant to cover minor physical construction variances. Because the new administrative measurement pushes the total square footage up, the developer is invoking that clause to bill the buyers for the extra newly calculated space.
Wait, so let me get this straight. If I buy a cake and the baker decides to put it in a much larger cardboard box, they can suddenly charge me for a bigger cake, even though the actual amount of food I get to eat hasn't changed at all.
That's essentially what's happening.
The buyers are arguing exactly that. Nothing physical was added to their private living space. The hallways and the elevators, they were always part of the building's design. This is purely an administrative reclassification by the Land Bureau.
It is such a fascinating case study in administrative blind spots. The Land Bureau changed how it maps and registers urban space, probably just to modernize their own records.
Sure, makes sense internally.
But they didn't account for how that retroactive measurement would impact existing privately signed contracts. The developer feels legally justified because the government deed literally says they delivered more square meters.
While the buyers feel extorted because they are staring at the exact same physical living room they purchased 6 years ago.
Exactly. A city's internal procedure for measuring a building on paper has completely upended private commerce. And now the courts have to untangle a 50 million burr mess.
Unbelievable. So with real estate trapped in bureaucratic lawsuits and the rental market buckling under price caps, a citizen in Addis Ababa who is just trying to build wealth has to look for alternative avenues.
Which brings us to Ethiopia's nascent capital markets.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we are watching human psychology completely override fundamental financial math.
Yeah, the recent initial public offering, the IPO of Ethio Telecom, is a prime example of a market driven entirely by behavioral quirks rather than traditional valuation.
So the government decided to float 10% of the state-owned telecom giant to the public. They set the IPO price at 300 birr per share. But fast forward just a few weeks into the secondary over-the-counter trading phase, and the price has rocketed up 143% to 852 birr.
Which is massive. And to give credit where it's due, the underlying company is an absolute powerhouse.
Oh, for sure.
Ethio Telecom's revenue surged 54% over a 2-year period, hitting 91.4 billion birr. And their mobile money platform, Telebirr, has achieved massive penetration with 47.5 million subscribers.
The corporate fundamentals are undeniably strong.
They are. But the financial experts cited in Addis Fortune make it glaringly obvious that this massive price leap isn't a calculated response to those fundamentals.
Right.
It's being driven by artificial scarcity.
Yeah, to understand this, we have to look at how over-the-counter, or OTC, trading works in a brand new market. We aren't talking about algorithmic, high-frequency trading on a digital stock exchange here.
No, it's very different.
We are talking about retail buyers, everyday citizens, trying to negotiate direct transfers. Buyers are aggressively eager to get in on the ground floor, but the current shareholders simply refuse to sell.
They're holding on for dear life.
Yes, they are holding their shares in a vice grip, assuming the price will just climb indefinitely. And because no one wants to part with their shares, desperate buyers have to inch their bids up by 5 or 10 birrs at a time just to tempt someone to sell.
And that exposes the inherent fragility of early equity trading. In a mature, developed stock market, institutional sellers like big banks, mutual funds, or market makers, they step in to provide liquidity.
They keep things moving.
Exactly. They buy and sell constantly, which stabilizes the price around the actual value of the company. But in a young market driven almost exclusively by retail investors who have, frankly, never traded stocks before, price discovery is untethered from reality.
It's fueled almost entirely by FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Precisely.
It's like a massive game of musical chairs where no one wants to stand up because the music hasn't stopped, but they don't realize the chairs they are fighting over are made of paper.
That's a great analogy.
Yosef Elamihu, a financial expert we quoted, issued a stark warning about this unchecked retail speculation. People are transferring huge sums of money without reading the company's prospectus or using basic valuation multiples.
And the ultimate reality check here.
Yeah.
The new buyers who are happily paying over 800 burrs a share today, they won't even see a single dividend payout until the 2025-2026 financial year.
Wow, so they're waiting years for any return.
Years. Connecting this to the broader economic picture, it really highlights a severe lack of market education. When a stock price inflates this rapidly, completely disconnected from any immediate dividend yield, the margin for disappointment becomes razor thin.
Because if the hype cools down,
If the music finally stops, retail investors might suddenly realize they overpaid for assets that won't yield a return for years. A crash in confidence now could severely damage trust in the entire concept of a capital market in Ethiopia before it even truly gets off the ground.
that's a scary thought. So we are seeing unchecked psychological speculation in the stock market, chaotic bureaucratic paperwork in real estate. The city is just dealing with friction everywhere.
Everywhere you look.
So how does the Addis Ababa City Administration attempt to fix the chaotic spending and friction within its own walls?
They mandate a sweeping digital revolution. They are trying to force transparency and efficiency through software.
Yeah, the city has drawn a hard line in the sand. They ordered their 48 largest spending agencies to completely abandon the old paper procurement system and migrate every single tender to the electronic government procurement platform known as EGP.
And the stakes here are astronomical.
They really are. We are talking about digitizing the control of a 174.2 billion birr budget allocated for sectoral offices.
This is the money funding major city construction, water infrastructure, education, health services.
Exactly.
To appreciate this shift, you really have to understand the mechanics of the legacy paper system. Historically, bidding for a government contract meant physically printing out massive binders of blueprints and financial proposals, hand-delivering them to an office, and relying on clerks to manually stamp and file everything.
Which is just a recipe for disaster.
It creates immense vulnerability. A crucial page could mysteriously slip out of a competitor's folder, or a lucrative contract could be quietly awarded to a well-connected friend without a clear public record.
Right. So by forcing everything onto the EGP platform, the city expects to cut general waste by 5 to 25%. But more crucially, they create a permanent, time-stamped, auditable digital trail that is incredibly difficult to manipulate.
Which sounds flawless in a presentation deck.
Right. It sounds perfect. But I look at this and wonder, can a software mandate actually rewrite human behavior? Or do entrenched habits just find a new digital backdoor?
That's the big question.
Especially because a mayoral mandate doesn't magically install fiber optic cables. What happens when an agency clerk is trying to upload a 2 gigabyte CAD file for a new skyscraper and their office Wi-Fi just drops out?
Which happens all the time.
Our reporting highlights massive resistance to change from procurement staff, a severe lack of basic digital literacy, and critical physical infrastructure hurdles that are causing the system to stall.
And that friction is the core of the digital transition dilemma. Policymakers frequently treat technology as a silver bullet that can cure institutional dysfunction.
Just buy the software and it's fixed.
Right. But a digital platform is only as robust as the human beings trained to operate it and the physical bandwidth required to sustain it. You can write a law demanding every official log onto a website, but that law cannot magically teach thousands of civil servants how to navigate complex drop-down menus overnight.
And it certainly doesn't guarantee the municipal servers won't crash under the weight of hundreds of concurrent bids. I want you to think about a major digital transition in your own workplace. When a company rolls out a shiny new enterprise software system, does it actually fix the underlying bad processes? Or does it just take the existing dysfunction and digitize it?
Right, the EGP software represents the theoretical ideal, but the digital literacy of the staff and the reliability of the internet connection represent the real-world weather, testing the system's structural integrity.
Real-world weather. I like that. Speaking of real-world variables dictating outcomes, let's zoom out from municipal software to the global stage.
Let's do it.
We've examined how local infrastructure limits citywide platforms, but let's look at how highly specific local habits can dictate massive, multi-million-dollar international decisions. We are tracking Ethiopian Airlines as they prepare to buy a fleet of new airplanes.
This is a highly anticipated strategic acquisition. Ethiopian Airlines is preparing a firm order for 25 new narrow-body aircraft. And they are weighing three distinct options:
Okay, what are you looking at?
the Airbus A220, the Boeing 737 MAX 7, and the Embraer E195-E2.
The pressure on this decision is immense, too, because global supply chain delays are absolutely wreaking havoc across the aviation industry right now.
It's a mess out there.
Due to manufacturing backlogs, airlines globally are projected to lose $11.3 billion in 2025 alone. They simply cannot get new planes delivered fast enough.
Which forces them to keep flying older, fuel-guzzling aircraft, pay exorbitant fees for leased engines, and stockpile spare parts.
Yeah, so Ethiopian Airlines urgently needs these 25 planes, and they need the economics of the planes to be flawless.
And if you look strictly at the engineering and financial data, the Brazilian-made Embraer makes an incredibly compelling case for regional African routes.
Because it's the lightest of the three, right?
Yes, it is the lightest. It carries the lowest initial capital cost to purchase, and crucially, it burns the least amount of fuel per trip, which translates to massive savings on those shorter high-frequency hops.
And the Boeing.
The Boeing, by contrast, is a heavier machine that burns more fuel, though it flies further and holds more passengers. And the Airbus sits comfortably in the middle of those metrics.
Okay, so if you are an executive staring at a spreadsheet optimizing for regional routes, the math screams at you to buy the Embraer. It is the clear winner on fuel efficiency. But here's where the local context completely shatters that spreadsheet logic.
This is where it gets crazy.
Aviation expert Jonathan Menkir points out a problem completely unique to this market. Domestic passengers in Ethiopia travel with incredibly heavy checked baggage.
And what's fascinating here is that single cultural habit changes the entire physics of the deal.
This detail blew my mind. You mean to tell me a multi-million-dollar international aviation strategy could literally hinge on the fact that domestic flyers pack too many heavy suitcases? That completely breaks the spreadsheet logic.
It does, because the Embraer is engineered primarily to transport people, not heavy freight. Its cargo belly is relatively small.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so if Ethiopian domestic travelers consistently show up with massive bags of cargo and personal goods, the Embraer's hold simply might not be able to accommodate the weight or the volume.
That perfectly encapsulates the entire theme of our deep dive today. Efficiency calculated in a vacuum means absolutely nothing if it doesn't align with the reality on the tarmac.
Exactly. An aircraft that saves you thousands of dollars on fuel burn, but routinely forces you to leave paying cargo behind because the belly is full, will ultimately bleed money.
Right.
And you can take that a step further into the operational friction. Ethiopian Airlines currently operates massive fleets of Boeing and Airbus planes. Choosing the Embraer means breaking outside that established ecosystem.
Oh, so new training, new parts?
Exactly. That requires purchasing entirely new, multi-million-dollar flight simulators, putting mechanics through rigorous retraining programs, and establishing a completely separate, highly expensive inventory of spare parts just for the Embraer fleet.
It's a huge commitment. Context dictates everything. Whether you are measuring the cargo capacity of a Brazilian jetliner, debating the square footage of an apartment hallway, or testing the upload speed of a city procurement server, the local human reality is the ultimate judge of whether a system succeeds or fails.
The theoretical blueprint has to survive the human element every single time.
Let's bring all these threads together. Today, pulling from the incredible reporting at Addis Fortune, we've traveled from the neighborhoods of Addis Ababa, where renters and landlords are locked in this precarious dance dictated by well-intentioned price caps,
to the federal courtrooms where developers and buyers are fiercely debating the administrative definition of an apartment size.
We've watched an infant stock market surge purely on the psychological scarcity created by retail investors.
We've seen a city government attempt to mandate transparency through a digital portal despite serious infrastructure hurdles.
And finally, we look to the skies, where the literal size of a passenger's suitcase might dictate a massive global fleet purchase.
In every single story, we are observing attempts to solve complex, wildly dynamic problems with rigid, static rules, an 11.24% rent cap, a 10% tolerance margin, mandatory software usage, fuel efficiency metrics.
Which leaves us with a provocative thought to mull over as we wrap up today. If every single one of these engineered solutions requires a perfectly balanced, entirely predictable environment to actually work as intended, what happens to our rapidly growing cities, our emerging markets, and our critical systems when human behavior simply refuses to follow the script?
It's a great question.
Are we spending entirely too much time, money, and political capital trying to draft The perfect, unbreakable rules and not nearly enough time trying to understand the actual unpredictable people who have to live by them.
It is a question every growing metropolis has to answer eventually.
We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's an absolute privilege to explore the incredible stories we get to work with here at Addis Fortune. Keep questioning the rules, keep looking for the reality behind the numbers, and we will catch you on the next deep dive. Goodbye.
Goodbye.